Hello students, good morning. This is Professor S.B. Bhendigeri, Department of Economics, taking online classes for PUC first year commerce students. Dear students, in the last class we have discussed about World Trade Organization, which was the very interesting and important topic. And today let us have a look on the Indian economy during reforms and assessment, which is the last subtopic of the economic reforms, and also most important question for the examination. Indian economy during reforms and assessment. It means what? During that reforms period, what was the status of Indian economy? We have to assess it. When Government of India assessed the status of Indian economy during reforms, it has given many pictures right from 1991 to till date. The reforms process has completed 2 decades since its introduction. As of now, we have completed 20 years of time of economic reforms. In economics, the growth of an economy is measured by GDP, that is gross domestic product. As we know, in an economy of any country throughout the world, the growth of the economy is calculated always through its gross domestic product. If we are looking at the below table of GDP of Indian economy during reforms period to as of now, the following table explains the GDP growth rate since its reforms period. Okay, look at the table. In the first column, we have mentioned sector. Second column 1980 to 91 report. Third column 2002 to 7 report. Fourth and last column 2012 to 17 report of GDP in India. Look at the first sector, that is agriculture. In 1980 to 91 means in pre-economic reforms, in pre-90s, the agriculture sector growth rate was very less, that is 3.6% at GDP growth rate. It was the status of before economic reforms. It was 3.6%. Look at the 2002-7 status of agriculture sector GDP. It has declined from 3.6 to 2.3%. I'll tell you why it is declined in that particular year. Look at the 2012-17 report of agriculture sector GDP. That was 4%. So in the beginning, in pre-90s, pre-economic reforms, agriculture sector GDP was 3.6. Again, in 2002-7, it was declined to 2.3, and it has increased in 2012 to 17. Coming to the industrial sector. Industrial sector GDP growth rate was 7.1% in 1980 to 91. In pre-90s, for example, economic reforms, in introduction of economic reforms, industrial sector GDP growth rate was 7.1%. It has drastically increased in 2002-7 period. You know why? Here, in economic reforms in 1991, Government of India has given greater priority, greater importance for the development of industries. As we know, India is a labor-oriented country, and it is not possible to increase the economic growth of the country with the help of agriculture itself. And a labor-oriented country is not able to increase its development only through agriculture. It also requires the development of industrial sector. But industrial sector requires huge amount of capital formation. So due to that scarcity of capital in pre-90s, Government of India has given greater importance for the development of industries immediately after introduction of new economic reforms. So because of that, there is a drastic increase in the GDP growth rate of industrial sector from 1891 to 2007. Again, look at the picture of 2012-17. Industrial sector GDP growth rate was 9.6%. Again, it has increased. It has seen ups and ups. There is no downs and downs in the GDP growth rate of industrial sector, right from pre-economic reforms to 2012-17. Now coming to the third sector, a most important sector of the economy of underdeveloping countries and developing countries, that is service sector. Look at the picture of service sector in 1980-91. It was 6.7%. It was very less. Compared to industrial sector, it was less. And immediately in 2002-7, it was 7.8%. Here also Government of India has given greater priority for the development of service sector like banking, insurance, public sector. Okay. So for these areas, Government of India has given more stress, and there was a drastic increase in the service sector growth rate. Okay. Now look at the 2012-17 report of service sector growth. It is also increased rapidly compared to all other sectors. But the growth rate of service sector is faster than earlier two sectors like agriculture and industry during reforms period, and also right from reforms period to 2012-17. So the purpose behind increasing the growth rate of service sector as compared to agriculture and industry is to make India as a technology oriented country, and to make things easier and to make things electronically, to minimize cost and time, and to increase the quality and quantity of the product. Because of that, there was a drastic increase in the service sector during the reforms period. If you are having assessment on Indian economy during reforms, service sector has grown up like anything during reforms period. Look at the next picture. The opening up of the economy has led to rapid increase in foreign exchange reserves. Opening up of the economy in the sense globalization. Okay. Due to globalization in economic reforms, the foreign exchange reserves of the government has increased, and also foreign direct investment and foreign institutional investment also has increased rapidly. It was increased from about 100 million US dollars in 1991 to 73.5 billion US dollars in the year 2014-15. There is a tremendous increase in the FDI and FII because of that globalization during a reforms period. Okay. So there was a drastic increase in FDI and FII. Look at the picture of foreign exchange reserves during reforms period. The foreign exchange reserves also increased tremendously from $6 billion US dollars to 321 billion US dollars. There is a tremendous maximum increase in the foreign exchange reserves in India because of opening up of the economy like globalization. And one more interesting thing is, India is one of the largest foreign exchange reserve holder country in the world, and it has seen as a successful exporter of auto parts, engineering goods, IT softwares, and textile in the reforms period. So it has become one of the great exporter countries of the world during the reforms period because of exporting huge amount of auto parts, engineering goods, IT softwares, and textile supposed to be. Okay. On the other hand, the reforms process has been criticized because of not able to address some basic problems. Which were the basic problems? Like employment, agriculture, industry, infrastructure, and fiscal management. On one side, India has developed like anything because of introduction of economic reforms. But on the other hand, it was also criticized because of not addressing many of the sectors during reforms period. You know, the developing country like India is always facing a problem of employment opportunities, lack of agricultural development, industrial sector development, infrastructure and fiscal management. Okay. Here, these areas must be developed in India because India is a labor-oriented country. Okay. Now look at the main headlines of slowdown in the following areas during reforms. In which areas India got slowed down in the development? We have to understand in the assessment. Then only we are come to know what is the status of India during economic reforms. Okay. Look at the first slowdown of the Indian economy, that is growth and employment. Though the GDP growth rate increased during reforms, as we seen in the table, GDP growth rate was increased in case of agriculture, industry and tertiary sector. But the problem was this reforms and this development has not generated sufficient employment opportunities. India has failed to provide the expected and sufficient employment opportunities for the people. This is the basic problem during reforms in case of employment. Now coming to the problem of agriculture. If you are looking at the reforms in agriculture, reforms have not been able to benefit agriculture, first of all. Okay. Economic reforms of the country has not addressed the development of agriculture. But India is a well-known country in agriculture, and maximum percentage of the people of the economy are dependent upon agriculture. But there was no scope for agriculture development during a reforms period. And public investment in agriculture, especially in case of infrastructure like irrigation, power, roads, market and research, has fallen during reforms. Most of the FDIs were not came forward to invest their own capital in agriculture sector, especially in case of what I said, irrigation, power, roads, markets and research areas. Due to that, there was no development in agriculture. There was no overall development in the agriculture sector. And again, the removal of fertilizer subsidy increased the price and cost of the production. See, in those days, Government of India has removed the subsidy on fertilizers and pesticides. Once the subsidy is removed, automatically the price of that particular product, what happens? Increasing. Okay. Due to removal of fertilizer subsidy and pesticide subsidy, automatically there was a hike in the price and cost of the production of agriculture sector, which has affected small and marginal farmers. Basically, India is a agricultural dominant country, but maximum farmers are coming under medium class, poor class. Most of the farmers are not rich, and they are not able to invest more amount of capital for the development of agriculture. And they have to pay more amount of prices for fertilizers and pesticides, and there is no modified irrigation facilities, roads, power, everything. If such is the condition, there is no overall development of the agriculture sector. And reduction in import duties on agriculture products and minimum support price also adversely affected Indian farmers. Very interesting. In that reforms period, Government of India has reduced the import duties on agriculture products. If such is the condition, what happens here? If the import duties on agriculture products declined, automatically imports becomes greater. Imports are goes on increasing. When the importable goods are available at cheapest rate compared to the domestic products, agriculture products, people like you and me are automatically go and purchase imported items. And demand for imports, what happens? Increasing. If the demand for imports increasing, automatically demand for local and domestic products, what happens? Slowing down. And also, the minimum support price also adversely affected Indian farmers. Especially what happens? Government of India has decided minimum support price for all the products. If government is decided the price, no consumer like you and me never pay high price for that particular product. So each agriculture product is purchasing at lower price only. Okay, so minimum support price also adversely affected Indian farmers during reforms period. Moreover, because of export-oriented policy strategy, there has been a shift from the production for domestic market to export market. It leads from food grains to cash crops. Again, what happens here? Government of India has declared the export-oriented policy strategy. Means Government of India has given greater importance for exportable items. When the exportable items got greater importance, there has been a shift in the production of domestic market to export market. All agriculture farmers are start producing the exportable items than the, for example, production and domestic market oriented products. Due to that, most of the domestic consumers face problems to satisfy their different human wants. And it leads from food grains to cash crops. Food grains are very much important for the human being, for his good health. Instead of that, if we are going to grow the cash crops, automatically it leads the cash balances, but human being is suffering a lot from enjoying and satisfying different human wants by consuming different food grains. Now coming to the next aspect of the slowdown of economic growth during economic reforms, that is reforms in industry. As we have seen in that table, the GDP growth rate of industrial sector has increased, but yet there were many problems in the development of industrial sector. Industrial sector growth also recorded a slowdown because of decrease in the demand for industrial products due to cheaper imports. See again, Government of India, as I said in the beginning, removed the import duties not only on agricultural products and also the industrial products. When the import duties on industrial products declined, automatically domestic customers are start purchasing the importable items. And again, what happens? The domestic industrial products are not demanded more, and these products are not able to compete with importable items. And inadequate investment in infrastructure, competition from importers, lack of power supply, pre-movement of goods, and India does not have access with developed countries because of non-tariff barriers. See, these are the many problems which industrial sector faced as a challenge, but till date there is no possibility of solve all these problems. Because of that, there is no development in the industrial sector. Now coming to the disinvestment, next aspect. Every year government fixes a target for disinvestment. I'll tell you the meaning of disinvestment later. Every year government fixes a target for disinvestment of public sector undertakings. In 1991-92, it was targeted to mobilize rupees 2,500 crore, but it reached more than the target of rupees 3,400 crore. What Government of India has thought? To increase the income, to mobilize the income from disinvestment. The government was targeted only 2,500 crore income to mobilize from disinvestment, but the target was increased more than that. It was 3,400 crore in 2014-15. Do you know what is the meaning of disinvestment? Disinvestment means selling of government-owned equity shares to private entrepreneurs. It seems there has been a loss to the government and public sector undertakings were undervalued. It means what? When the public sector units are running under losses, government is trying to hand over those loss-bearing industries to the private entrepreneurs by sharing its equity shares with private entrepreneurs. That is called as disinvestment. Okay. Through disinvestment, most of the industries were given in the hands of, referred to the hands of private entrepreneurs. That is called as disinvestment. Now, coming to the next part of the economic slowdown in most of the areas during reforms period. Reforms and fiscal policy status. Look at the status of reforms and fiscal policy during economic reforms. Economic reforms have placed limits on public expenditure. Economic reforms have placed limits on public expenditure. The tax reductions in the reforms period aimed to yield larger revenue and to curb tax evasion, but it is reversed. The tax reduction curtailed the scope for rising revenue through customs duties and tax incentives to the foreign direct investment, also reduced the scope for rising revenue. It means what? The tax reductions in the reforms period aim to yield larger revenue. What the Government of India has thought during the reforms period, once the taxes are declined, automatically we are able to increase the tax revenue as well as we are able to control the tax evasion. Tax evasion means the people, those who are escaping from paying taxes to the government. That is called as tax evasion. So these two can be automatically solved with the help of reduction in the tax. But the government expectation was reversed. And once the taxes were reduced, the foreigners have got maximum benefit of that reductions of taxes, for example. So this is all about the economic slowdown in the following areas during reforms. Okay. With this, my dear students, I have completed the third unit, that is economic reforms. Okay. Thank you very much.